Unit 5. Diabolic.
邪悪な、残虐な
The police are searching for the diabolic murderer. Diffuse.
を拡散する、放散する。
The lighting was beautifully diffused throughout the room. Connotation.
願意、
This word has a slightly negative connotation. Indictment.
悪い印、欠陥。
That is a damning indictment of our public health care system. Engulf.
波、炎などが、を飲み込む。
The flames engulfed the building in an instant. Modulate.
を調節する、加減する。
The intensity of the light beam can be modulated. Inanimate.
生命のない、非常の。
A stone is an inanimate object and does not move at all. Negligible.
ごくわずかな、無視できる。
The transportation costs are negligible. Profane.
不敬な、冒涜する。
Do not use profane language. Pretext.
口実、言い逃れ。
He took off from work under the pretext of going to see a doctor. Unruly.
言うことを聞かない、荒れ狂った。
The police were called to calm down the unruly crowd. Pesky.
うるさい、厄介な。
A pesky mosquito bothered me all night long.
Dictate.
を命令する、指示する。
Please don't dictate what I do. Ponderous.
文体、話し方などが重苦しい、退屈な。
His latest book was ponderous rather than philosophical. Fidelity.
忠誠、忠実。
Employees owe a duty of fidelity to their company. Inane.
馬鹿げた、意味のない。
The actress was fed up with being asked lots of inane questions. Malign.
を中傷する、けなす。
The politician does nothing but malign his opponents. Insignia.
官職、功績などの記章、勲章。
The uniforms had the insignia signifying a soldier's rank. Convoluted.
議論などが複雑な。
Her argument was too convoluted for me to follow. Emphatic.
強調された。
They were emphatic that global warming has been caused by humans. Mishap.
災難、不運な事故。
The Queen's visit to Japan ended without any mishap. Embolden.
を勇気づける。
He was emboldened by her smile many times. Snitch.
告げ口する人、密告者。
He confessed to being a snitch. Sectarian.
宗派の、党派の。
More than 100 people died in a sectarian attack.
Impermeable.
不浸透性の。
Most modern building materials are impermeable to water. Exhilaration.
陽気、興奮。
The crowd was in a state of exhilaration. Prophetic.
預言者の、予言的な。
His novel later proved to be prophetic. Sullen.
不機嫌な、拗ねた。
She looked sullen during the party. Stolid.
無感動な、鈍感な。
The accused remained stolid even when he received a sentence of death. Clobber.
をぶん殴る。
He was clobbered on the head and required 8 stitches. Condolence.
哀悼。
I offer my sincerest condolences to his family and friends. Protrusion.
突起部。
There were some metal protrusions sticking out of the wall. Senile.
老年の、老人性認知症の。
That patient suffers from senile dementia. Coalition.
連合、提携。
The Prime Minister formed a coalition government. Craze.
一時的な熱狂、大流行。
Running has become the latest craze to sweep the country. Acquittal.
無罪判決。
The news of his acquittal surprised everyone.
Jeer.
あざけり、やじ。
Fans gave a jeer to the player. Desolate.
人気のない、荒涼とした。
I saw a desolate landscape through the window. Inaugurate.
人を就任させる。
She will be inaugurated as CEO next month. Dissonance.
現行の不一致。
There is dissonance between their beliefs and actions. Equivocate.
曖昧なことを言う、言葉を濁す。
The Prime Minister equivocated when questioned on that subject. Spillage.
こぼすこと、こぼれること。
She put the container in a plastic bag in case of spillage. Pivot.
中心となる人、物、要。
He was the pivot of the research project. Swill.
アルコール飲料などをガブガブ飲む。
He stuffed himself full of burgers while swilling beer. Robust.
経済などが活発な。
The company's stock rose on robust sales growth. Intangible.
触れることのできない、無形の。
Intangible assets include patents and trademarks. Epiphany.
啓示、ひらめき。
Have you ever experienced any religious epiphanies? Delinquent.
非行の罪を犯した。
Those delinquent boys had similar backgrounds.
Naturalization.
帰化、
The athlete applied for naturalization as a Russian citizen. Abstention.
投票を棄権すること。
The vote was carried with 20 votes in favor, 13 against, and 5 abstentions. Conjugate.
動詞を活用させる、変化させる。
I'm not sure how to conjugate this verb. Flippant.
不真面目な、ふざけた。
The audience was offended by his flippant remark. Omniscient.
全知の、博識の。
This novel is a third-person narrative and told by an omniscient narrator. Dainty.
上品な、優美な。
The lady waved her dainty lace handkerchief. Counterfeit.
偽造の、偽の。
The criminal group was arrested for making counterfeit bills. Eclipse.
の影を薄くする、を上回る。
The scientist's discovery has been eclipsed by the scandal. Morbid.
考え、成功などが病的な。
The criminal of the case had a morbid fascination with blood. Luminary.
優れた人、有名人。
He is known today as one of the luminaries of 19th century science. Slacken.
速度を緩める。
The runner never slackened her pace to the end. Perseverance.
忍耐、根気強さ。
This type of research requires significant effort and perseverance.
Obsessive.
強迫観念の。
She came to have obsessive thoughts after the accident. Inertia.
不活発、緩慢。
She couldn't throw off the feeling of inertia after her afternoon nap. Equilibrium.
均衡、釣り合い。
To keep the market in equilibrium is difficult. Perimeter.
周囲、周辺の長さ。
A security guard patrols the perimeter of the house constantly. Benevolently.
慈悲深く。
He smiled benevolently and said everything was okay. Spree.
ある行動にふけること。浮かれ騒ぎ。
The tourists went on a shopping spree there. Repudiate.
を拒絶する。
Some members repudiated their party's policy. Irresolute.
優柔不断な。決断力のない。
They were too irresolute to take swift action. Preoccupation.
没頭、執着。
His preoccupation with power ruined his life. Swamp.
沼地。
The swamp attracts many migratory birds. Relinquish.
権力などを放棄する。
The spokesman was forced to relinquish his position. Microscopic.
微小な、微細な。
The marine biologist is studying microscopic creatures.
Dispensation.
罰、義務などの適用免除。
He obtained a dispensation from military service. Jubilee.
記念祭、祝祭。
The Queen's Diamond Jubilee took place to mark 60 years of her reign. Buoyant.
価格、景気などが上向きの。
The country's buoyant economy is attracting foreign investments. Revamp.
を改良する。
That nation needs to revamp its election system. Derogatory.
軽蔑的な。
The lawmaker made derogatory remarks about other party members. Matriculate.
大学に入学する。
He matriculated at Harvard University in 1988. Mentor.
良き指導者、助言者。
She is acting as a mentor to school pupils. Conformist.
伝統、慣習などに従う人、順応主義者。
The musician has long said he will never be a conformist. Facetious.
ひょうきんな、冗談の。
I was scolded for giving facetious answers to the teacher's questions. Abyss.
深淵、どん底。
The company climbed out of its financial abyss. Satirize.
を風刺する。
The play satirized 3 of the most corrupt politicians of the time. Poignant.
心に強く訴える、感動的な。
The old song brought back poignant memories of my family.
Condescending.
威張った、相手を見下すような。
Some doctors had a condescending attitude toward their patients. Cardinal.
非常に重要な、基本的な。
Respect for basic human rights is a cardinal principle of the Constitution of Japan. Scrimp.
切り詰める。
They scrimped and saved to send their children to college. Irate.
怒った。
I don't know how to deal with an irate customer. Shackle.
を拘束する。
Many African countries are shackled by huge external debts. Deplorable.
嘆かわしい、遺憾な。
The foreign minister has condemned the incident as extremely deplorable. Ambient.
周囲の。
The ambient temperature should not exceed 20 degrees. Conciliatory.
なだめるような、融和的な。
The country adopted a more conciliatory approach on the issue. Encumber.
を妨げるの足手まといとなる。
I was encumbered with a heavy camera and a thick guidebook. Superfluous.
余分な、
All software has superfluous functions. Mutate.
突然変異する、を変化させる。
It may mutate into a deadly virus that is transmissible from human to human. Outcry.
世間の強い抗議、憤激。
The shooting incident triggered a public outcry.
Exasperate.
を苛立たせる、激しく怒らせる。
Our teacher became exasperated at our lack of enthusiasm. Addendum.
追加物、本の本意。
This report is provided as an addendum to the earlier document. Precipitate.
を急に引き起こす。
Excessive drinking can precipitate health problems. Ebullience.
あふれんばかりの情熱、元気。
He spoke with ebullience about his country's soccer team after their win. Morass.
南極、泥沼状態。
The country managed to get out of the economic morass. Deceased.
死去した。
Her deceased father left a large sum of money to her. Contemplate.
を熟考する。
You should contemplate your future. Warden.
監視人、管理人。
As a wildlife specialist, he has spent 20 years as a park warden. Buffer.
干渉。
The United Nations created a buffer zone between the two countries. Malice.
悪意、敵意。
That is a horrible crime committed out of pure malice. Stymie.
を妨害する、邪魔する。
The moving plan has been stymied by land contamination problems. Purvey.
食料、情報サービスなどを提供する、調達する。
It is our responsibility to purvey accurate information.
Surmount.
障害、困難などを乗り越える、克服する。
He had to surmount many obstacles to become a well-known writer. Conviction.
有罪判決。
Only 25% of these cases have resulted in convictions. Reprehensible.
非難されるべき。
He is ashamed of his utterly reprehensible behavior. Suffocate.
を窒息死させる。
Two men were found in a car suffocated to death. Confrontational.
対決的な、挑戦的な。
The country took a more confrontational stance against the international community. Matrimony.
結婚。
They were joined in matrimony last week. Prosecute.
を起訴する。
The politician was prosecuted for taking bribes. Impregnable.
考え、地位などが揺るがない、動じない。
Her position as the leading figure seems impregnable. Beckon.
に手招きする、合図する。
A woman in a black dress beckoned the boy to come in. Racket.
大騒ぎ。
Our next-door neighbors were making a racket last night. Sanctuary.
鳥獣保護区域。
This wildlife sanctuary is inhabited by a wide range of birds and animals. Forfeit.
を罰として失う、没収される。
The team forfeited the game because of a violent act.
Upend.
を逆さまに置く、ひっくり返す。
He sat on an upended bucket. Jostle.
争う。
Two major airline companies are jostling for market share in that country. Revoke.
を撤回する、無効にする。
He had his driver's license revoked. Obliterate.
を消し去る、跡形もなく破壊する。
The building was completely obliterated in the tornado. Bestow.
を授ける。
The king bestowed a medal on him. Courier.
書類、小包などの配達人、配達業者。
I will send the parcel by courier. Insolent.
傲慢な。
I can't tolerate his insolent behavior anymore. Servitude.
隷属、服従。
A lot of people are in a state of servitude in that country. Culpability.
責任、罪。
He did not acknowledge his culpability. Constitutional.
憲法の。
The freedom of expression is one of the constitutional rights. Dangle.
をぶら下げる、ぶらぶらさせる。
The boy was dangling his legs from the high chair. Tantrum.
癇癪、立腹。
She is annoyed with her son's tantrum.
Authoritative.
権威のある。
This is the most authoritative book in the field. Snip.
をハサミで切る。
He snipped off the corner of the ticket. Absurdity.
馬鹿げたこと、もの。
We couldn't help laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Grind.
穀物などを引く。
I ground wheat and made 3 loaves of bread. Fetter.
を拘束する、束縛する。
The productiveness of labor is fettered by working conditions. Custody.
未成年者の保護・養育権。
The state took custody of the neglected child temporarily. Larceny.
窃盗罪
The man was arrested for grand larceny. Vanquish.
を破る、負かす
He was vanquished by his rival in the competition. Mangle.
をめちゃくちゃにする。
His car was mangled in the accident. Agape.
驚いて口を開けた。非常に驚いた。
He just stood there with his mouth agape when he received an acceptance letter. Repose.
落ち着き、平静。
The earthquake disturbed the repose of the small village. Skeletal.
骨格の。
Birds share many skeletal features with dinosaurs.
Virulent.
病気などが非常に危険な。
The virulent disease spread rapidly across the country. Tingle.
体などがヒリヒリする。
The spicy sauce made my tongue tingle. Ebb.
潮が引く。
The tide is ebbing now. Stopgap.
一時しのぎ。
This is merely a stopgap measure to address the problem. Hush.
を黙らせる。
She began her speech and hushed the audience. Predilection.
強い好み。
My brother has a predilection for Latin music. Phase.
を困惑させる、ひるませる。
She didn't seem to be phased at all. Ram.
に衝突する、激突する。
The taxi was rammed from behind by a bus. Dribble.
液体、よだれを垂らす、垂れる。
I accidentally dribbled some coffee on my shirt. Distressing.
痛ましい。
It is very distressing to read the report on the war victims. Prerogative.
役職上の特権。
The royal prerogative has been exercised in the past. Seditious.
扇動的な。
She called for a revolt in her seditious speech.
Suffrage.
投票権、参政権。
She led the campaign for women's suffrage. Contravene.
法律などに違反する。
Their act may contravene the international law. Precedent.
前例、慣例。
The judge's decision will set a precedent for future cases. Accost.
に近寄って声をかける。
I was accosted by a drunk on my way home. Obstinate.
頑固な。
He is very obstinate when he wants to do something. Expiate.
罪などを償う。
I would do anything to expiate my guilt. Graft.
汚職。
The article exposed graft in the government. Jinx.
悪運をもたらすもの、人。
There seemed to be a jinx on the project from the beginning. Provident.
将来に備えた、慎重な。
You should lead a more provident life. Torrid.
熱烈な。
His latest novel is based on his torrid love affair. Succulent.
果汁、肉汁の多い。
They served succulent fruits as dessert. Verbose.
言葉数が多い。上慢な。
Her thesis was unclear and verbose.
Bout.
病気、活動が続く期間。
I always have a bout of hay fever in early spring. Digression.
話などが本題からそれること。
That discussion was a digression from the main subject. Ditch.
溝、用水路。
I fell into a roadside ditch. Arbitrate.
を仲裁する、調停する。
The UN arbitrated the dispute between the two nations. Fortitude.
精神的な強さ。
She overcame a lot of troubles with fortitude. Constriction.
締め付け、抑圧。
The political constriction is a characteristic of autocracy. Austere.
簡素な、飾り気のない。
It was an austere room with just a desk and a pair of chairs. Kindred.
同類の、よく似た。
I don't believe in ghosts and kindred phenomena. Extort.
金銭などを強要する。
They attempted to extort large sums of money from Ms. Miller. Pear.
果物などの皮を刃物で剥く。
He pared an apple for me. Affliction.
苦痛。
The loss of her dog caused her much affliction. Tally.
勘定、計算。
You must keep a tally of what you owe.
Demean.
の品位を落とす。
The naughty behavior demeaned him. Reticent.
無口な。
She is reticent about her family. Reprieve.
人の刑の執行を中止する。
The murderer was reprieved from a death sentence. Catastrophe.
破局、大失敗。
The party was a catastrophe. The guest of honor didn't show up. The food was awful. Streak.
に筋をつける。
The blue sky was streaked with thin clouds. Rumble.
ゴロゴロ音を立てる。とどろく。
I heard thunder rumbling throughout the sky. Cryptic.
不可解な。
A cryptic message was left on my answering machine. Onerous.
面倒な。
we still have the onerous task of cleaning up. Proliferate.
急増する。
The use of smartphones has proliferated in recent years. Drain.
排水管。
The rooftop drain is blocked with leaves. Pandemic.
病気が広範囲に流行る。
Those countries are facing the threat of pandemic diseases. Subsequent.
その後の、それに続く。
The event affected the subsequent relationship between them.
Smear.
を塗りつける。
He smeared butter thickly on his toast. Wriggle.
うまく切り抜ける。
She wriggled out of the desperate situation. Extrapolate.
を推定する。
We can extrapolate the result from this data. Personable.
人が感じの良い、魅力的な。
Her son is a very personable young man. Overdue.
帝国、期限の過ぎた。
He paid a fine because his rental DVDs were overdue. Rundown.
手短な報告、説明。
He gave us a brief rundown on the event. Detour.
回り道、迂回路。
I had to take a detour because of a traffic accident. Entreaty.
懇願。
They would not listen to our entreaties. Unabashedly.
恥ずかしがらずに。
She revealed her feelings unabashedly. Endow.
人に才能などを授ける。
Evolution endowed humans with flexible brains. Upscale.
高所得者向けの、高級な。
They went to an upscale restaurant on their wedding anniversary. Clump.
どしんどしん歩く。
I heard him clumping up the stairs.
Defector.
国、組織からの離脱者、亡命者。
The defectors had a meeting to form a new political party. Decipher.
を解読する。
She succeeded in deciphering the old documents after a 20-year study. Shrug.
肩をすくめる。
He shrugged his shoulders and said he didn't know. Attuned.
順応した、調和した。
It took long for me to become attuned to the customs of the country. Exponential.
急激な、幾何級数的な。
The population of the city is increasing at an exponential rate. Splinter.
破片。
The mother removed a splinter from her son's finger. Statutory.
法定の。
The statutory speed limit on this road is 40 kilometers per hour. Intractable.
扱いにくい。
This book discusses the intractable problems with an aging society. Scanty.
わずかな、乏しい。
Information about the group is scanty at the moment. Affability.
気さくさ。
She is popular with everyone for her affability. Debar.
人に禁じる。
He was debarred from driving a car for 3 years. Adversarial.
敵対者の、当事者対抗の。
Trials in that country are based on the adversarial system.
Scrutinize.
を綿密に調べる。
They scrutinized the data for errors. Credulity.
信じやすい性質。
The company was accused of taking advantage of the credulity of consumers. Extricate.
を救出する。
We extricated him from the dangerous situation. Articulate.
はっきりものを言う、歯切れの良い。
He is a very articulate speaker. Trance.
傍我。
She worked in a trance all the night. Vociferous.
やかましい。文句要求などが声高な。
He was known as a vociferous critic of the president. Foil.
計略などを妨げる、失敗させる。
The terrorist plot was foiled at the last minute. Intervene.
介入する。
The government should not intervene in the economy. Invincible.
無敵の、打ち負かせない。
The troops were viewed as an invincible army then. Cursory.
大雑把な、存在な。
Even a cursory examination reveals many fatal problems. Truculent.
喧嘩腰の。
He is always truculent and often gets into a quarrel with someone. Facet.
物事の面。
Our website explains every facet of Japanese life.
Addictive.
中毒性の、習慣性の。
The online game is addictive. Decree.
を法令で命じる、布告する。
The local government decreed that smoking be banned in public places. Resume.
を再開する。
We will resume the conference at 3 p.m. Snatch.
をひったくる、素早く手に入れる。
She snatched the letter from her brother's hand. Dart.
矢のように動く、進む。
He darted into the classroom just before the class started. Innuendo.
暗示、ほのめかし。
The film was banned for sexual innuendo. Deplete.
を激減させる。
The development in the area could deplete underground water supply. Prolonged.
長期間の。
The prolonged war left the region in ruins. Mutinous.
反抗的な、
He sometimes shows a mutinous attitude toward his boss. Slump.
価格などが急落する、
Sales slumped by over 30% last year. Apex.
頂点、絶頂、
We at last got to the apex of the mountain. Twitch.
体の一部がピクピク動く、
His lips were twitching as he suppressed a laugh.
Data file. Phonology.
音韻論、
Syntax.
統合論、文法、
Semantic.
意味論の、
Lingua franca.
共通語
Inflect.
を語形変化させる、
Vernacular.
日常語、話し言葉、
Colloquial.
口語の話し言葉の、
Preface.
序文、前書き、
Bibliography.
参考文献、
Missionary.
伝道者、布教者、
Prelate.
行為聖職者、司教、
Worship.
礼拝、祈り、
Penance.
懺悔、罪滅ぼし、
Pagan.
異教徒、
Esoteric.
秘儀的な、
Requiem.
鎮魂歌、
Rampart.
城壁、
Chivalry.
騎士道、
Inscription.
碑文、
Glyph.
象形文字
Recite.
を暗唱する、朗読する、
Stunt.
曲芸、スタント、
Interlude.
幕愛、
Effigy.
記念碑などの彫像、
Porcelain.
磁器、
Cathartic.
精神浄化作用のあるカタルシスを起こす、
Balm.
香油、
Folklore.
民間伝承、
Maxim.
格言、禁言、
Hunter-gatherer.
狩猟採集民、
Lance.
槍、
Dynasty.
王朝、
Autocrat.
専制君主、
Remains.
遺跡、遺構、
Hearth.
路床、
Flint.
火打ち石、
Dungeon.
地下牢、
Concentration camp.
強制収容所、
Shipwreck.
難破船。